I make all the mistakes in the world and I have tons of regrets. But the thing that has always at least helped keep me on a course that at least I can be proud of in the face of hard things is, well, how did I live my life? How am I living my life? And what legacy am I going to leave behind? And that has impacted the work and impact how I operate and manage people and create vibes, because I'm not asking someone to fix something, or I don't get mad at failure because I understand it's momentary, right? Like, it's like, well, how are we learning from this? And do you have the purpose, the passion, the vision to still be a part of this? And we can work with that.
Welcome to Vibecast, the podcast that dives deep into the heartbeat of workplace culture. I'm your host, Kristi. Join me in conversations with extraordinary leaders as we unravel their experiences, both positive and negative, that have impacted workplace culture. This podcast is more than storytelling. It's about actionable insights. Are you ready to transform the vibe at your workplace? Let's go. Today, I got to chat with Nguyen. He's the founder of Supervillain, a creative marketing agency that's helping brands rethink how they connect with people. Before launching Supervillain, Nam held leadership roles at some very recognized brands, including serving as Global Executive Creative Director at Intel, where he helped build one of the company's most diverse and innovative creative organizations. His work has earned recognition from organizations like Forbes 30 Under 30, Ad Age, Cannes Lions, Fast Company, and more. He really is human first and believes the best work comes from creating environments where people feel empowered, trusted, and inspired. I love something that is very prominent on his website, that he cares deeply about the work, how we get there, who we get there with, and the people we do it for. That really tells you a lot about the kind of leader he is and the business that he leads. I really walked away from this conversation feeling refreshed and inspired, and I think you will too. All right, Nam. Well, really glad that you're here. I'm glad Jasmine made the introduction of you and I, and in sharing a meal with her last week, she said, I'm in for a treat. So I can't wait to get to know you a little bit more, because we don't really know each other that well, and just hear all you have to share with the world. So thank you for being here.
Oh, super excited to be here. I mean, I love that we don't know each other that well, so this will make it a totally, it's like, yeah, I mean, getting to know each other in real life. There was no pre-interview, pre-questions,
Yeah.
anything, so I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? It's funny because I always tell people I should record my first interaction with somebody that I'm meeting as a podcast guest, because I'm always so curious during those conversations, and I have like a ton of questions, and then I know a little bit about the person, so I don't always ask those questions again. And so we get to kind of do it for the first time here, so that's great.
Oh, I love that method. I used to be a cultural ethnographer, right? So it was always raw, like running up to people, talking to them. So I love the clean. We have no idea who we are, but I imagine we're gonna be great friends by the end of
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I would like to just kick it off and start off understanding from your perspective and your lens how you would describe a vibe in the workplace.
Gosh, how I would describe a vibe. For me, how I would describe a vibe all comes down to what is the general sort of energy, chemistry, and purpose of an organization, right? And that chemistry is always a term that I always use when trying to build organizations and to create a vibe. And I think we've been doing this long enough where I don't even think we were using the word vibe when we were building teams and part of organizations. So it's kind of like, vibe has become that layer, which is like an appropriate word, right? It's like, what's the general vibration of an organization? And is it at a place that feels great, right? Like safe, um, full of momentum, full of optimism, I would say would be a great vibe. Like that to me would be the vibe. And it's, being here in Silicon Valley, but I think it's easily mistaken, especially in the past, as like free lunch,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, like
ping pong table, kegs, exactly. Yeah,
ping pong tables.
totally. So that to me is not vibe. That's like the surface stuff, but the vibration is the tenor that lays underneath of an organization, and is that at the right frequency, you know? So
I'd be so curious, w being in Silicon Valley, how that vibe has changed over time, because I think that you're right, like, for so long, it was like the Google effect almost, right? Like, Google had this cool workspace, this open concept, these snacks, but then in return, they what I heard, I've never worked for them, required a lot out of you, and that's the reason that they had all of those great things there, right? And I think people still got burnt out regardless of how much they fed you. So, how have you seen that, just again, from your observation, kind of how's that energy, motivation, optimism, vibe changed in Silicon Valley in general?
yeah, no, it's really interesting. So I love that question because I'm born and raised Silicon Valley, right? So
Oh, so
I
you've seen it, you know it.
oh, I know it. I was here when like I mean, I'm old enough to remember orchards, you know what I mean? Before I mean, some of the tech companies started orchards and greenhouses, right? So I remember that. But and of course, like, back then, the vibes didn't really matter, or the sort of the perks didn't really matter as much, right? Because it was, like, just a job, but over time, obviously, as probably job market got more competitive, you had to introduce those things, and also to make, like, what used to be cube cities, right? Which I imagine was, like, cubicle monstrosities, a little bit more appealing for a younger workforce. They did all those things, and during that, like, that sort of, like, mid-wave, or actually right before the economic, like, disaster in 2010, like, I was at a creative agency, right? For a while, and I think the difference in being in the shift and being is, like, we both worked hard and worked a lot, right? Like, I was like Goodby Silverstein& Partners, and if you can ask people, like, there were some nights I didn't go home. Like, I would sleep on the couch. Like, I'd be there for 72 hours. At one point, one of the partners of the company would be like, "Nam, here's like, go get a hotel, take a shower, go down the street," because I lived in the outer Sunset. He's like, "Go down the street, take a shower, take a nap, come back." He's like, "It's too much," right? But but on the flip side of that, what I always saw is those perks, like free dry cleaning, dental care on site at Google or whatever it was. That was their way of keeping you at the office, like a park that never got dark inside, right? Like, you'd hear about all those things. Like, so families would come visit you, they were, like, building, like,
Yeah, communities within the office space.
totally, and that was just so you wouldn't leave or you didn't have to leave, right? But I think the difference was, like, for me, like, I didn't want to leave, right? When I was working around the clock at the agencies, like, I didn't want to leave because I was working around some of the most incredible people. A lot of those people that I was working with and pulling all-nighters with are some of my best friends today. They're some of my clients today, you know? And that was a vibe, right? Like, it was all driven by purpose, and something greater. And yeah, sure, we were making like medium dollars, at the time when everyone else was making like big bucks, as they would say. But at the end of the day, we were driven by something that still unites us today. And so that was a great teacher for me, and being like, hey, the technological vibe was like, hey, it was great when the money was good and and the perks were high, right? But today you see it, right? The perks are gone, the layoffs are happening, and I think, at least from what I see and I've heard from my friends in the space, like, and they want the purpose back, right?
Totally. I was having a conversation with, a tech founder the other day. They're not in Silicon Valley, but they are a tech company. And he was saying something very similar. He's like, "I just see it with the people that work, like, they just want something more." And 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 that something more sometimes is hard to create virtually. So, we got into a pretty deep philosophical conversation really about what people need, want, and how we're designed to be in community with one another and connecting with one another in person. And I know it's a very, very hot, controversial topic right now because COVID kind of slammed the door on the office space and said, figure it out. And so we've integrated work and life and home and for better or for worse, we have this kind of like fluid life, or at least I do, right? Of how I operate within my day that includes maybe seeing a client and being at home and putting a load of laundry in and welcoming my kids home from school and, right? But it's had some, like, detrimental effects on the vibe of an organization, and I'm not suggesting, like, everyone go back into the office 5 days a week from 9 to 5. It's also not what I'm suggesting, but I do think you're right, like, being in that office space, I'm sure, for 72 hours and you guys just, like, feeding off the energy and the ideas and the work and the like, there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I'd hate to compare it to war because, like, that's terrible, but I think when you go through something, like, as rough and traumatic just generally with people, you see the best and the worst of them, but you also get to see them and know them, and you get to have, like, a real human attachment to that experience together, you know? And I'm always struggling, and I'll be fully honest, like, I can admit I was a really great leader when we're all in the office. And I'll fully admit, I don't think I've been the best leader since COVID, because I've been needing to adjust as to, like, how do I create that vibe that is so disjointed and people's schedules are all over the place because we want them to go pick up their kids. We want them to.
But then you're like sometimes you're like, "But wait a minute, the work's still" like, "Wait, I can't schedule a call at that time?" So, yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't know what the right answer is in terms of, like, leadership and leading in this interesting, hybrid, integrated world, but I would agree with you, when you're in office and you're interacting in those micro moments, right, throughout the day, it's easier to get to know somebody. It's easier to do things that feel less transactional, right? And it feels easier to lead where when you're remote, it's hard to do those quote unquote water cooler conversations, right? That create the human experience.
Totally, and I know why some people are skeptical of it, but, like, you said it best. Because for me, at least in terms of, like, the type of way I lead, the being in person is not about micromanagement or making sure that they're working. For me, I miss being able to pick up on someone if they had a bad day
Totally.
and, "Hey, let's go take a walk," you know? Or just even check in, or if they've had a bad or even for some people, I'm an introvert, and so I've always seen the value of this, which is why it's shaped my leadership style, which is like, I'll just make sure to go say hi to everyone when they come into the office, or if I'm walking the floor. When I was at Intel and I managed, like, a large team, I would literally just snake through the office and just say hi to folks and recognize that they were here, because some people don't have big social networks, and I may be the primary interaction that they have that day if they were single and, like, you know what I mean? And
Mhm. Totally.
but with the virtual thing, we just all assume that people are okay, you know?
I totally. Unless they tell you, and most
Unless if
won't.
they tell you, and most won't, right? And most won't tell you, and why won't they tell you? It's because unless if you have a relationship where you can be so vulnerable virtually, like, I can call my best friend and tell him anything over the phone or on Zoom. But if I don't have that level of connection yet, it's like
Yeah. Yeah. So weird. Yeah.
it's so weird. And then I'm also guilty of, like, not knowing how important it is because I can't pick up on their vibration, right?
Totally, yeah. Yep,
But if they're in front of me and I see them trembling a little bit or
yeah. Body
slow to speak,
language.
body language, and
Yeah,
then half the time people aren't even on camera, so I can't even tell if, like,
I
they're
know.
sitting on the other side, like, it's like these layers that have been created in between us, right?
I know, it's really, really wild.
Yeah, so that's my crave of bringing people into the office, but
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so take me back for a minute because I kinda skipped over this. Take me back for a minute and your kind of journey to get where you're at, right? Not necessarily like I had this job and I had this job, but just like your journey in this arena of creating the right vibe and energy in the workplace and like where you started, how any defining moments or like periods of time where you're like, "This is super important to me, and I'm gonna go do this out in the world," because we'll get to where you're at today and what you're doing for other organizations and how you're helping them create those things, but, talk me through your journey a little bit.
I love that question. I love how you framed it because it's not about my resume, but it's about the experiences that make up the that's a brilliant question, by the way. I love it. Yeah, it's a brilliant question. Because it made me think immediately because I think my first experiences that fundamentally define who I am today were really forged by how I grew up. You know what I mean? Like I grew up an introvert. I grew up alone, son of immigrants, heavily bullied. You know, made fun of every day, bullied violently. Didn't have many friends growing up, right? Like at all. Like I'm shocked. Even my own parents are shocked as to who I am today versus who they thought I was going to be. I'm not even kidding. Yeah, they're like, "Oh my god, you turned out okay," you know, like, and I was trying to no, well, kind of. My sister is 8 years older. My sister is 8 years older, so it's kinda sorta, right? But not really. She's very much, a sister that I am close to and I love, but so I don't wanna say I'm an only child because that is
Sure, sure.
definitely
I
not true.
I I'm in that same boat. I'm 6 years older than my brother, and I'm 14 years older than my younger sister, so I get that completely. We were all kinda only children.
Totally, yeah, but as you get older, there comes a place where you kinda, like, level out a bit, perhaps? Yeah, yeah, that's where we are. But yeah, but I think growing up alone and with parents that didn't really understand, what American culture was like, you know, because and who were working multiple jobs, like, I've always felt, like, isolated out of place, right? And I think that is so defining for me because when I would go to school, it was the same way. But I was such an observant kid, I was always trying to just create environments, basically since then, create environments that didn't have that experience for other people, you know? And and throughout my entire career and as I got into leadership and management, I still think about that, right? Which is why I will recognize if there is an employee or a team member who is just totally isolated, not saying much, and I will give them the space in the room to speak, or I'll check in on them afterwards, you know? But I think that was such a defining moment as one, and then as I got older, not to replay my entire life story, there was a moment, that I started to make friends at some point, and then team sports, right? Team sports was the other vibe, and I didn't start playing team sports until, I changed schools and I left the school that I was being heavily bullied from, and I was sitting after school by myself, waiting for my parents to pick me up because they worked multiple jobs, and so sometimes I wait after school till, like, 7, 8 PM as a 5th grader, yeah, and I was just sitting there and watching the boys play, practice basketball, they were practicing on outside. The ball rolls all the way over to me, and I'm like, "Oh my god, what is this thing? It's so foreign." Like, I don't know what this ball is.
Do I talk to them? Do I not talk to them? Do I throw it back? Do I
And I threw it back exactly, I'm sweating, I'm so nervous, like because and I was newly transferred to that school too, so I knew no one, and it was a small private school, small Catholic private school, and the coach, which was my friend Chris's dad at the time, runs over, he saw that I was new, and he's like, "Come play with us," you know? And it was the first time I'd ever been invited to anything, you know? Yeah, it was the first time I'd ever been picked on a team or invited to do anything. It was crazy, and lo and behold, like, I made friends, I understood the team at team sports, the coach was amazing, but again, that was a great example of watching other leaders lead in the minutia of creation of their teams and their environments versus just focusing on the star, or whatever. He knew me from nobody, you know?
Right, right. But you recognize that you were there by yourself and that he could include you. That's a big deal. And those are, like, the many moments that change the trajectory of people, right? That we're missing in the workplace.
100%. And that's a vivid memory. If that never happened for me, I don't know if I would have had the confidence to be, sort of develop into who I was, and look, 3 years that was 5th grade, 3 years later, I was one of the top basketball players on my team, you know? Yeah, I made the all-star in our, like, little mini Catholic league. I made the all-star team, and then I played high school ball, right? And high school ball introduced me to some of my greatest friends and one of my clients today. Like, it's one of those things, right? And so for me, I love that question that you asked because it is in those little moments, and us as leaders and vibe creators, etcetera, need to pay attention to the minutia, and unfortunately, it's hard, and sometimes people don't understand, those moments because they don't see it, right? And I'm sure the coach, right, that coach, and I have so many examples of this, Kristi, like, throughout my life, right? Yeah, so I'll tell you, but, like, for example, but that coach, Chris Mr. Gendeza was his name, Chris's dad, probably had no idea, probably still has no idea. I need to call him, right? Now that we're talking about it, I need to call him and Chris, but, he had no idea, but the only thing that he saw was a person that has humanity and understood that they had something to offer, right? And it didn't have to be the greatest performance ever, whatever, but I was someone that had something to offer, and he was gonna find out, right? And I think that's a big lesson, and throughout my life, so from there, that was high school, um sorry, that was middle school, and then in high school, I went to a Catholic high school called Archbishop Moody High School, which I'm absolutely in love with. They helped define my path as well.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much because I have a high school daughter, and she goes to a very small private Christian school, and we talk about how special it is a lot, and, in fact, one of the founding members of the school, I'm totally going off on a tangent right now, but one of the founding members of the school, did the commencement speech. So the school's been around 11 years, did the commencement speech at their graduation. She didn't graduate, but I went to graduation because it was just I wanted to experience it, and, he talked about how his high school shaped him, and so he wanted to create a school that could shape others and how important those 4 years of life are, and so I love when I hear other people talk about that because I think it's a unique experience. I don't believe that the majority of people have an experience in high school that they can brag about.
No, I think it's true because I would go the rest of my life, be it here when I moved to New York, and talk better about my high school than my university, and people would be like, "What are you nuts?" Like, I hated high school, you know? And don't get me wrong, high school is hard in a lot of moments because you're growing up, you're angsty, but in terms of, like, the environment, whatever, like which is why, like, I've gone back and I still sit in committees, at my high school, and
So cool. Like, the impact you can have on young people figuring themselves out at that age.
oh, I mean, and through what we do, right? Like, and beyond that, it's like and a lot of our clients are other Catholic schools and Catholic high schools, right? Today, like, I am still in service, be it MIDI or any other institution like that. It doesn't even have to be faith-based, whatever, but I think the thing is like I am constantly in a quest to recreate environments and be a part of that. And I can tell your work that we've done there later, be a part of that because I know how pivotal it was for me, you know?
Mhm,
But
mhm.
yeah.
I think we often forget that, like, some of the things that happen in corporate America or just in the workplace in general actually happen because of the experiences people have several years prior, right? Like, we have to remind ourselves and rewind beliefs, of adults because adults are shaped by the experiences they had in those formative years. I mean, middle school is super important. I have 2 middle school kids and a high school kid. Middle school is the beginning, right? And you can get off course very quickly, but high school, you become an adult in high school, or you start to form adult like behaviors, and you have independence like you haven't had before. And so I think when, a lot of times, like in my consulting, I'll be asked to go in and like do a training on something. I'm like, I need to, like, unwind a belief system that goes, like, 10 years back. I'm not sure I can do that in 2 hours.
Yeah. No, no, exactly. You're absolutely right, which is why, I mean, and I have, I know this podcast is about you're interviewing me, but I'm just so fascinated by what you do too, because on sort of the HR consulting and culture side of things, I have always understood that if you were doing your job right to what you're describing, you're like you just described, you're kind of a therapist, right? And if you had the time and whatnot to do, you could unwind it and you should unwind it, and people should do that work to be like, "Hey, what were the great things that I can bring forward and whatnot? And if I did have a bad experience and now I'm in a position to create experiences, what can I correct? Because that's gonna be my legacy, right? And I shouldn't carry that legacy forward if it was bad, because again, and selfishly to them, it's about their reputation and how do you make it appealing for them to change and to shift and impact culture in that way. But that's why, I mean, you bring up a point, which is why I'm just so concerned about like things like AI and who's building it, like, do we have the right builders of the technologies of our future? And are they the right people? Have they seen the right things? Are they looking at the world the way that we should, or at least thinking about our future in the way that it should? And is it legacy creating or is it moment defining for them? Like those are all those things that I am
Ooh, that's a good
just
one.
yeah.
Legacy creating or moment defining.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Yeah, so I've always been the type, and maybe it was because I was fortunate enough to have a family that had to reboot their lives, and I've had that narrative to build off of, and my dad being a very honorable man and been of the Navy, like, whatnot. He always pushed me, and some of my mentors have always pushed me, but, like, "What what do you wanna leave behind?" Even since I was a kid, they would always be like, "What are you doing now that you can be proud of in 20 years?" Right? And in that instance, I've always, even though there was a future where I was really violently bullied, where I couldn't see a life past like 18, but the moment I could, I was always like, okay, look, I'm not a perfect person by any means. Like I am not. Like I make all the mistakes in the world, and I have tons of regrets. But the thing that has always at least helped keep me on a course that at least I can be proud of in the face of hard things is, well, how did I live my life? How am I living my life? And what legacy am I going to leave behind? Right. And that has impacted the work and impact how I operate and manage people and create vibes, because I'm not asking someone to fix something, or I don't get mad at failure because I understand it's momentary. Right. Like it's like, well, how are we learning from this? And do you have the purpose, the passion, the vision to still be a part of this? And we can work with that. But if you're just here for the awards or the paycheck or the RSUs or the keg in, in the cafeteria, great. But I'm gonna challenge you to think differently, right? Because that for me, that's my responsibility, because we do have a responsibility to try to hopefully leave this place, better, and ever since I was young, and I think you ever since I don't have children, long story, but even when I was young, I was always like, "Well, what am I gonna be able to tell my kids about how I lived my life?" You know? And that is still something that drives me, and I think about that for other people too, and I'm like, "Hey, like, what are you guys doing?" But again, we live in be it social media, which, I'm actively responsible for, or whatever it is. It's like, but it's more and more about the moment, right? Like, and, but I'm encouraged, this younger generation, even though there's, it feels like maybe there's not a lot for them to, like, look towards. I think a lot of them are looking towards purpose and legacy. We have a lot to learn. Yeah, and we have a lot to learn from the edges of our population, right? The very young and the very old, right? And the very old will tell you like, "Hey, what did I do that made it worth it?" Right? When you're a soul in that one-way trip home, like, what is that thing when you look back in your life that you built that you can be like, "Hey, I was really proud of that," because that's gonna be what you think about in the final days. And then as you're young, and we can learn a lot from that. And as you're young and you have middle school kids and young kids, and I have a lot of nieces, nephews, or which are my friends' kids, whatever. And I'm like, you see them, and like the whole world is an opportunity.
It's so cool to see. It's, like, a little overwhelming when you're already, like, in a career and you look back and you think, "How do you even pick? Because there's so much, right? Or, like, how do you even decide, like, what to do next? But it is also so cool to see, like, you could literally do anything.
You literally do anything, yeah. And I'm so excited for you, you know?
I know me and my oldest have this conversation a lot because I'm like, we have a lot of life discussions about like, "Well, mom, what if this happened or what if this or what if this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that would change things," or but like you have nothing but opportunity sitting in front of you.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? And for us, we're like right in the middle right now, right? We're kind of right in the middle, and we're like, and we are so inundated with like what's in front of us, the moment, right? Where we forget though, like, hey, when we were really young, anything was possible. And and I used to deliver Meals on Wheels, right? So I used to talk to older folks, elderly folks who were home ridden, and I think that's shaped my perspective. And we talked to older folks, and they're like, "Oh my god, like what have I done? What am I gonna be remembered for?" And for some reason, the young and the old are two populations that we tuck away into the recesses of our society, and then we're left with us, who's just like, "What about right now?" You know? Yeah, who am I exactly? Where the answers are in front of us and they're behind us, and we put them away. You know, like and somewhere in between there. And I think that's the thing. But if we do that, that's why the moment um, is the only thing that matters, right? And I think we've gotten too far in the YOLO and whatnot, as you should. Like life is amazing, you should live and whatever. But at the end of the day, though, it's like, hey, but if we're being so thoughtful about, well, what is our legacy going to be? What am I going to leave behind that fundamentally will make me proud to be remembered, or people remember me by? I think it really changes who you are and what you build and how you build it, you know? So versus if you're
Yeah, we
just
can be YOLO with care, right? Like we can't
exactly
be careless.
100%.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
you should live life a little risky, in my opinion. I'm too conservative, you know?
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, you should bet on yourself. You should, because that is the part of life, and you should fail and you should do all those things
And
and
that's
you
part of the
should
story and the legacy that you leave, right?
exactly 100%.
Okay, so let's fast forward to talk about what you're doing today, right? So you've had this kind of great experience, life experience and career experience, right? That has led you to this path of transitioning to the company that you own and deliver on today, right? So tell me more. I guess tell me more about what you do and how you made that transition into what you're doing today, and then the impact that you're having. You briefly mentioned it on some of the schools that you're doing work with. But yeah, tell me
Yeah,
more.
for sure. I'll tell you where we are today, and then I'll and so basically, I've started a creative agency with my business partner, co-founder Gerardo, who I've been creative partners with for the past 13 years. And we started a creative agency called Supervillain, right? And Supervillain was really founded off this premise that um, the other and the voice of the other is just as important, right? And sometimes it's just a shift in perspective, because who's to say who's a hero and who's a villain? And sometimes when you think of the folks that were villainized, they were just the folks that were misunderstood, right? They were early. They were the ones that actually changed things, right? And some of the greatest change makers of our time, be it, Dr. King, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, like Dolores Huerta, Bruce Lee, like you name it, right? Like I can go on and on about people who people thought were um, kind of nuts or evil or whatever, and be like, hey, but they were villainized. They were thrown in jail. They have mugshots. Some of them were persecuted, right? Even my own parents, came, and when they were processed here in the United States, I found these old mugshot photos that were taken, and they were like relegated to a number, and there was like, yeah, it's crazy, right? But this is how we treat we treat each other. So, but it all stems from misunderstanding. So, supervillain was created from this sense of like, hey, like the other voice, it may be bold, it may be risky, but it's sometimes the voice that you do need, right? To stand out and apart and move the world ahead. And so that is a general ethos of supervillain, and we service every industry. So we're in healthcare. We work a lot with Stanford Healthcare right now. We help launch Curry brand for Stephen Curry a few years ago, and we work in the sports space a ton, tech space. We helped Cerebus kind of like flag plant themselves as a brand before they, went IPO this past year. So, and then we work with a lot of schools, which like that was a big passion point of mine. People are like, "Why are you working with high schools?" I'm like, "Why aren't you working with high schools and elementary schools?"
You're like, "This is where it starts, man."
Yeah, totally. Take me to the start of it.
Yeah, I don't wanna be in the middle, I wanna be at the
No,
beginning.
exactly. Put me in the middle because what I'm trying to build is an end, an end that is greater for people, and that's kind of actually how we see things, right? We see things very holistically, and to the start and to the end, I'll also say we also launched our management group where we manage talent now, so it's Supervillain Management, where to the start, we are now managing and representing like a high school basketball player before she even like is really kicking off her career. We're entering the college space and have entered the college space, and then now we're also end of career. We're working with Ruthie Bolton, who's one of the founders of the WNBA, two-time Olympic medalist, about to be honored into the Basketball Hall of Fame next month, right? And so we're doing pre and post career work with talent that most people would have been like, "Hey, you don't make me enough money in the moment," right? And and so it is through lines. So for Supervillain, I basically created a company with G where we were like, "Hey, let's just take everything that we value, believe, and all of our experiences in the past of every agency, company we've run, and take all of the things that we would have done our way if we could do it our way, and do our own thing." And that's what we're doing now. It's not easy running a business the way we're running it is not easy for sure, but thankfully we have incredible clients that continue to bet on the way we see the world. And yeah, and it's been tough building a team in this COVID era. I'm not gonna lie, it's a little bit different and more challenging. I don't have like the big tech budgets that I used to have to create and make and
You gotta get
whatnot.
real creative, right, about how you do it. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, and do the hard thing, but you know what the good news is, and this goes tracks back to where I started my career. I started in nonprofit, right? Like, I actually started in the nonprofit sector in child development and domestic violence, advocacy, and back then, we had to do a lot with a little, right? Because that's what you had to do, and so, between that experience, the experience of working at some of the biggest agencies in the world and the biggest companies in the world, take all that, take the purpose of all that, especially from the upfront and the community sort of service organizing standpoint, and then all of the capitalistic, sort of efforts that we did at some of the other agencies and companies, and I think we've created a company here that is squarely in position to help bridge, humanity and brands, is what we say,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, that's really, really cool. So how do you translate your experience to your team, right? Because you've created this business with your business partner based on your guys' experience, and that's really hard to, like, tell somebody because it's almost like you had to experience it in order to create what you've created. So how do you do that?
Gosh, I will say I don't think I've done it as well as I have in the past with Supervillain, only because of the remote hybrid whole situation, the consistency. In the past, it was all by lead by example, and you will feel it, right? And through the pure
Mhm.
transference of us as collaborators, partners, people, right? Like, we get to know our stories a little bit, right? You get to
Mhm.
ask why this person is a certain way, and they get to find out why I'm a certain way.
Mhm.
And I think what's most powerful, which is, I don't know, I might be wrong in this. My team tells me sometimes I'm wrong with it. Actually, they tell me all the time I'm wrong with this, which is why we're here. But in the past, because I'm not one to like celebrate myself, you know?
Mm.
Which is
Mhm.
why like I'm not, I mean, I probably should have more credits on my awards than
Yeah. Which is
than I do
probably
right
why
now.
Jasmine said what she said. She's like, "He needs to, like, give himself more credit for the work he's doing."
Totally. Yeah, well, and for me, again, it's not about the moment for me. I could give all about awards, although I know it's good for business. But for me, it's like it's a balance. It is a balance, and I need to be better about that. But for me, it's like, well, am I doing something right now for this person that will allow them to take my job one day? That's legacy building to me. Legacy building is like, yo, put me out of a job, and I need to prepare you for that, right? That's not succession. I don't care about succession. I care about, well, what am I doing to prepare you? Because you may not be here, but if you end up getting laid off for something out of my control, if in the past, where I didn't tell or whatever, did I prepare you to continue to thrive and succeed, right? And I'd rather have my legacy, and I think all of our legacies should be about how we're equipped, especially leaders, equipping people to be better versions of themselves and to create, you know, wealth and safe spaces for them and their families and whatnot. I think that should be our business goal, quite
Yeah.
honestly.
So why do you think
Yeah.
leaders don't do that, right? Because there's plenty that don't, but I would love your perspective on, like, why leaders don't do that.
Yeah, I think again it goes back to that moment to the legacy thing. I actually think like a lot of leaders right now care zero f's about their legacy, quite honestly, today. It used to be a thing. I think it used to be a thing. It used to be a thing when we still had heroes, you know? Name one hero out there that's a real person that you can really be like, "Hey, we know people aren't perfect, but one person who's just like, yo, like that is someone I absolutely look up to." I don't think, especially when I, work with younger folks or, we're out in high schools and talking to folks, I'm like, "Oh, who do you guys look up to?" And they're like, it's like, it's like, there's a bunch of people, which is great, awesome. I hope it's your yeah, mention YouTubers, and you're like, "You don't know," and they're like half of them are grifters, you know what I mean? Like, and they're not even mentioning, like, their coaches anymore. They're not mentioning their moms anymore. They're not you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where, I think because today it's all about, I don't know, at least my perspective, it's like we're racing towards wealth, you know? Or the people that have opportunity today are racing towards that. Not everyone, right? Obviously, I think there's a lot of people I admire. But yeah, but I think, I I I don't know, I think we're getting into some really philosophical stuff now, Christy, but yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah. Yeah, I just was curious, like, what you've seen or observed in your experience where it's like, somebody is I know we're all capable of doing that, but there's things that get in our way of doing it, whether it's, like, fear or pride or ego or, there's a lot of things out there, but I am with you on, like, if you are a better version of yourself when you leave working for me, that is a reflection of me.
yeah, 100%. That's a reflection of me, and that's a reflection of, like, yeah, I mean, again, your legacy, but I think it's one of those things where we've gotten to a point where I feel like we are also all just worried about ourselves, right? Like, we're posting about ourselves more, like we're in the era of the personal brand, and I'm like, hey, how do we get back to community and village? You know, because I think that's how you get out of it. You get out of it when you're like, hey, I'm accountable for that person. That person needs me, like, and what happened to the we, it's like, how do we do this, right? And how do we but I think again, I don't think it's people's faults by any means, because especially when you have mass swaths layoffs and budgets are being cut across the board, and we're spending on things that where you're like, "Hey, what about us?" Like, I think, what about the people that are really suffering, you know what I mean? Like, I think, again, I don't wanna make this a political thing at all, because I think I'm not a political, like, no, I don't know what they're going through, like, God, like, I don't know the decisions they have to make, but again, but I think this is what we see, but at least in terms of what we do on a daily basis, right? Like, how is it about the we? Like, right, when Coach Gendeza invited me to play basketball, he wasn't thinking about, "Hey, we don't have another spot."
Mhm. Or what is this gonna make me look like? Because I have a player who doesn't know how to play. Or
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. I have a player who doesn't know how to play, and they didn't have another spot, you know? Like, I mean, I think that first year in the 5th grade, I was like ball boy, you know what I mean? Like, it was, you know but I was part of the team. I was part of the team, It gave me a pathway back, but it made me a part of the tribe, the village, the
Yeah.
community.
We really have fallen short of that, and I think a lot of that has to do with, like, this remote work. I was having a conversation with another client the other day, and fortunately, they are mostly in office, their team, but I think because of the way the world works in transacting digitally and over Zoom, even if you're in office, if you're not conscious if you're not, like, consciously aware of how you're doing work, you start to transact the same way people do virtually, and so we had a pretty big conversation about, like, you have such an opportunity here to create a community that has roots in, like, what you're doing and why you're doing it, and we've lost sight of that, to be honest, in, like, creating the right experience for new hires to start because 'cause they're experiencing some turnover and they're kinda like, "Why?" So it's like, let's get back to the basics of, like, why people join organizations and why people stay, and, like, let's start to create that experience from day 1 or day 0, right? So that they can feel a part of something versus, like, just a job.
And I love that, and I love that you're pushing that, because I think it's more detrimental than ever, right? Like, we at least had the benefit of experiencing that when we were young professionals coming up, and I am yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, that's how I made, like, my best friends are from that time.
I Same. I like, it was amazing, and I think about that, like, and as much as I may have complained about going into an office or something like that on certain days, like, I think about the what I actually experienced, and I'm like, "My kids will never have that."
No, and that's the scary part, and we had, some younger folks in their early 20s on our team, and that was the one thing today, it's easier pre-COVID, and again, I'm trying to figure it out today. I will fully admit, like, I have no answers today, but that's the one thing I was always so concerned about, though. I was just like, "Hey, how can we they are not having the same experience that we had, and it's fragmented. Their leaders are dialing remote when they're here in person, and I'm like, and we are doing them a massive disservice. Like, forget, I mean, and I understand, like, honestly, like, I think there's some really great parts about the flexibility of remote work, because it with childcare, all of that stuff, like, I'm all for that, but when I look at the younger generation, I'm like, "Hey," like, just like what we said, like, high school is so, um, foundational, like, your first professional experience is, like, so foundational. Like, how are you gonna learn to be a manager? How are you gonna learn what to say, like, how to present if you're not in the room? How are you gonna pick up on the nuances of feedback if you're just not, if you know what I mean? Like, and that I'm so I like, to me, that is something that keeps me up at night, because the future of our entire professional existence is not getting the same sort of high touch, even if it was hard, kind of experience that we had.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. Or walking away from a Zoom call and feeling deflated, or without, like, your boss seeing you walk away with your head down and then your boss coming back around and saying, like, "Hey, are you okay?"
Or not even your boss, or you walking away and being able to, a friend of yours,
Yeah, or that.
or
Yes.
or just that, or yeah, but I mean, your boss amazing, but like but just being like your friends seeing you be like, "Yo, we had a
Totally.
tough meeting.
Yeah. Want to talk about it?
Let's go talk about it." Like, "Let's go grab a coffee or something," like, but instead now maybe they'll Slack or they'll text, but yeah, that's the part for me that I'm trying, like, how do we fix that, so
Yeah. So now, like, thinking about, anybody listening today and, what would be kind of like the one thing or 2 things, right, that you would give advice to anybody that and maybe you do give this advice, to those that you interact with, but, like, what's something that people could walk away with and go start doing? Because I think that's honestly the hardest part sometimes is, like, just getting started. It's not wrapped in an engagement survey, it's not wrapped in a culture committee or a culture budget or whatever, but it's like in the in between moments. And so what is something that is like really important to you that you think others could start doing as they walk away?
amazing. Yeah, great, and gosh, if you would've asked me this when I was, like, heading up global brand at Intel, it'd be very different than today, but I will tell you, older and wiser, but also I could do things then that I can't that I haven't been doing now, and so I'm gonna give you the things that I wish I was better at, than that I'm trying to be better at, which I think is important because I wanna hold myself accountable because I don't do it enough. I don't do these things enough, right? Because we do have a hybrid workforce and a remote workforce, right? We have folks in New York, Hawaii, and here. So, I don't and I'm doing it more, I'm trying, so I need to tell people how much I value them, right? And that I recognize and I see the work that is happening. Because I think for me, upon my own reflection, is that because things are updated on a status doc, or the work is getting delivered, or now with AI, I'm getting summaries from Asana of things being completed. It's like it's like being in social media, looking at your friend's feed and being like, "Oh, I'm totally up to date with their lives," and not checking in with them personally, right? And that's wrong, like, we need to call our friends and, but that's such an easy replacement, it feels like sometimes, and this is the same where when the work is happening and the work is good and, recognizing that it was probably harder to get there because of the remoteness and the isolation and that they had to figure out their own blah, blah. Like, I try as much as I can to reach out to those folks and tell them that I recognize the effort. I think the work is great. Thanks for staying up late if you were in New York and we were working behind. Like, but recognizing those things and because I even miss them so much at the speed of which we're running. Um, and it takes vulnerability to do that, right? But that is our duty as leaders, right? That is our duty as leaders to ensure that um, hard work, expecting hard work without recognition, without, and it's not even about the money, right? You hear all the time, you see all the studies. It's not about the money at all, but it's about does that person see me and what I do? And I'm trying to be more aware of it today because it's so much harder to see someone virtually, you know? So there's that. Um, and then the second thing is like to your point, like I need to be a better creator of our future and our vision. And what I mean by that is I don't think it's not like I'm not because we have a company that is still around and pointed forward. But what I mean by that is like I'm realizing how much more that I need to over index on creating the things that our team can point at to be proud of, right? Which is like celebrate the wins, get as much press as we can, right? Be on go on podcast. I usually avoid these, Kristi. If you weren't Jasmine's friend, I would not be doing this. When I've been having a great time, and thank you for yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, but doing more of this so our team can be like, look, my company is real. Like they're talking about what we are building, what not he, but what we are building in a way that I'm excited about, that gives me some sort of optimism. that speaks to the why and the purpose. And I think we forget that, being very outward in our own personal sort of effort and marketing is important. So people, be it remote or whatever, can point at the website, can point at the article, can point at a piece of work, point at the product, share it, and be proud of what they're creating. And that's gonna be the thing that unifies us when we're not all together, is not the being in person, but it's the lore that is created by the
Yeah,
leadership, you
the
know?
lore. Yes.
Yeah.
Totally, totally. Oh my gosh, it's so great. Well, I think we could go down lots of different rabbit holes on philosophy and how what we've observed and feel and believe to be true. So, but I just so appreciate your vulnerability and honesty, and sharing your story because I think, like I was saying before, it doesn't start with just changing a quick thing in a moment when you're, a leader in an organization. It's like, what's the story that created the behavior? And that's really important. And I also think that's important for people in an organization to know about you as a leader, right? Because it makes the person on the other end human. And they're like, well, I have a story too. And that's why, that's what shaped me to who I am today, and it doesn't mean that can't be changed or that can't be, enhanced, but it's just who they are today because of the stories that have, built them. So, I appreciate that a lot, and just yeah, thank you for sharing all that you've shared and doing the amazing things with your current company that you're doing. So,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to share. I think conversations like this and I love what you're doing. Conversations like this that are rooted around the why and really going many layers deeper than just, I feel like, other things, because I consume a lot of content that are all about just like, what's the answer? Like, how can what are the five things? It's like, no, like, so I appreciate that you are unpacking and going to, hopefully the root of it, and obviously, like, there's no one answer and the one right answer or five top answers, but I definitely do appreciate the opportunity for you letting me just also admit the fact that, like, none of us, if any of us admits we know exactly how we should lead in today's era, says that they know, I challenge that. But I think what you're doing beautifully is facilitating a group collective conversation mind share to figure that out, and clearly that's why you're at the center of so many of these companies that seek out your expertise. So it makes, it's a complete privilege to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Christy.
What a conversation. There were so many moments in this episode that I keep thinking about over and over. And one that really stood out was the way Nam reframed the idea of heroes and villains. He challenged us to think differently, not as good guys versus bad guys, but as the people and experiences that shape us. He also shared something incredibly personal about growing up feeling isolated and different. It would have been easy for those experiences to define him in a limiting way. And instead, they became the foundation for the leader that he is today. So cool to hear about that story. It's because he knows what it feels like to not belong. He's intentionally built organizations where people do, where they feel seen, included, trusted, connected, and human. That shift from isolation to creating belonging for others is one of the most powerful leadership lessons in this episode. And then there's legacy. Nam's perspective on legacy is that it isn't something you leave behind decades from now. It's something you're building every single day in those small moments. It's the conversations you have, the opportunities you create, the moments you intentionally design for other people. So don't forget that. We spend so much time chasing milestones that you often forget the small moments become the ones people remember forever. So, if there's one thing you carry with you from this conversation, it's this: Your influence isn't measured by what you accomplish alone. It's measured by what continues because you were there. So keep building the kind of vibe and the kind of legacy that people carry with them long after they've left the room. And stay curious, stay courageous, and keep vibing, my friends. If this episode inspired you and you want to see how you can take the next step to creating a better vibe within your organization, I'd love for you to download our complimentary 75 Vibes worksheet. This is a simple tool to create a habit and mindset around creating great vibes in work and life. The best part, it's simple and it works.